My next guest really knows what's going on inside workplaces during the pandemic. It may be hard to stay home at this time, but it can be tough for those who still have to go to work. Joyce Odidison is an expert on the wellness mindset of organizations.
You are watching Profunda TV with host Phyllis Haynes.
Joyce, it is delightful to have a chance to talk with you. There's a lot going on in the business world, and you're the perfect one to talk to about the state of affairs. You have a great sense about not only the Western Hemisphere, but the globe itself. But let me start with a basic question for you. How would you assess the current pandemic environment, and how is it affecting the clients that you have?
That's a great question, Phyllis. Thank you for asking. What I have noticed is that many organizations are struggling because, as you know, the pandemic wasn't planned. No one expected this. And we went from everybody being at home, at work, where work was somewhere we got up in the morning, got dressed, and went to now work meeting you at home, coming at home, we're working from our kitchen table. So some organizations struggled, very, very difficult transition for them with the pandemic. Some did not have the technology. They had to get employees um, set up at home for remote work. Some laid off everyone. They had to get people back on. So there was a lot of moving parts. But where I focus my energies on the interpersonal dynamics that occur as a result of the movements and the uncertainty and not knowing if there's going to be work next year or later this year or how long. And so what we see a lot of emotional turmoil, a lot of upset people. There is one course that I do. I do a webinar. It's called Dealing with Difficult Situations at Work. Well, let's just say it's been sold out all through that I've run it throughout the pandemic. And some of the things that employees are saying, some are very upset because in my clientele, there are some individuals who are essential workers, especially working through government or municipalities. There are just essential workers in various avenues that has, these people have to go to work because we do need services to continue to run our society. So we see different emotions like anger that they had to come to work, resentment of their bosses for not providing the proper PPE, not providing them with the proper safety. And then we see fear of getting sick, fear of riding the bus. Do I ride the train? How do I get to work? For those who have their own personal vehicle, that wasn't much of an issue. But we see a lot of different responses. So anger, fear, lashing out. And you know what was really surprising? One of the things I saw that really happened, because sometimes in the face of conflict or diversity magnifies, was the diversity conflict that we saw. The bullying, the harassment, the name calling, the finger pointing, the exclusion. Those are some of the issues that were more painful for employees to weather.
Well, the purpose of your company, as I understand it, was to really impact wellness in organizations. Now you're in the healing business, from what I can see. So, uh, what are some of the things that you recommend in this time? What are some of the suggestions in your very popular webinar?
Well, we do a number of different pieces in our various courses. So one that I've done, I mentioned earlier, is dealing with difficult situations at work. And the first thing is to identify what the difficulty is and removing the overwhelm. Because often we say, oh, it's so hard, it's so difficult but what exactly is hard and difficult? Because it's so easy for our brain to become overwhelmed and focus on the difficulty, because when we tell our brain it's difficult, it's going to bring up all the reasons to prove that it is difficult. So one of the things that we try to, when we work with employees, is to identify what the difficulty is. What is difficult about the situation? Not getting a call back from your boss, not getting a response from your email, from your coworkers, not knowing exactly what to do, not having the space, physical space at your home to do the work that you need to do. What is the difficulty? Because what happens when we name it, we're now able to address it. So right away, we minimize the impacts emotionally for them. It's not, we're not minimizing the problem. We want to reduce the overwhelm and the emotional turmoil so that they can think. Because when we are in a place of fear and overwhelm, we can think of solutions. We can think of, and it could be right under our noses and we pass it straight because we're not thinking about it. And it mentioned in my company, I came from a background as a conflict analyst, and over the years of working with the negative dynamics at work, I created what we call interpersonal wellness. So always looking at how do we deal with the interpersonal, the emotional, the psychosocial dynamics at work, so that we can create more harmony and positive interactions. Because one of the things that I've come to realize, it doesn't matter where you work, how long you've worked there, how much money you make. If you don't get along with your coworkers, you're just as miserable as the person who is getting half the pay you make. The reality is we want to be happy at work because we spend so much time of our working, of our life working, and so many hours at work. So work impacts a lot of who we are. We develop skills and competencies to be efficient at work, and those skills and competencies we take it home too. So we become what we do. And it is so important for us to work in a healthy environment because the skin is the largest organ. And if we are in an environment where we're always tense, uncertain, fearful, worried, we tense up, and it restricts our breathing. It causes heart disease, it causes mental health diseases, really impacts us physically and emotionally and mentally when we are in an environment with discontent, with tense, with anger, with conflict. So when we create interpersonal wellness and harmony, we have more positive vibrations in the workplace, and people can be happier, they can think clearer, be more innovative, and they are less physically constrained in their health and well-being, and they're now able to go home a happier person. So they bring some of that happiness to their family.
Okay, now this is very interesting because of the time we're in. The people who are at home, some people may be happy at home,
Yes.
being away from the workplace, and others may feel completely isolated. So how can we address the isolation that people are feeling? What are some tricks or tips if you've got a remote virtual working environment? What can a manager do to make it happier?
Well, one of the things that a manager has to do right away is relinquish control. And so there are some gadgets that got quite a lot of popularity because managers wanted to be able to see what employees are doing and to clock them in. I mean, remote work is not a new thing. Remote work has always been there, but the volume of remote work we have now, as due to the pandemic, has increased dramatically. So many employers are looking at actually maintaining some level of remote work. So in order for us to be successful as we transition in this whole new reality, we need to change our mindset. One of the things I teach in our wellness competency mindset work is that you have to have a positive mindset. You have to think of well-being. You have to think of your employees' well-being. Is your employee happy at work? Ask simple question. How is remote work going for you? What are the things you like about it? What are the things that's upsetting? What are the things that are not working well? Simple conversation. open up the dialogue, give your employees the opportunity to connect with you. Some employees actually need more connection time. They need you to check in with them in the morning. They need you to check in with them at lunchtime. They need you to check in with them at the end of the day so that they feel connected. Isolation is very different for different people. What maybe checking in for Tim, maybe micromanaging for Sally. So ask, how can I best support you during this time? Whereas you have other employees who are independent and they actually love working remotely and they just want you to give them their assigned tasks for the week. They want to have a meeting once or twice a week, check in, find out where things are, and they are good to work independently. But you may have other employees who need you to work with them. And I was thinking back to a client of mine whom I worked with before the pandemic. She had a remote company. All her employees were in another country. And she struggled with the differences in personality and the needs of the employees. What we were seeing is that some employees were quite fine to work on their own. They logged in, they saw their assigned task, they went ahead with it. And then there were the others who needed her to send them a nice good morning email. How are you? How was your night? I'm just checking in, making sure you were able to log in and get. And she was so frustrated. She's like, Joyce, why do I need to babysit? Why do I need to host? But remote work forces you as an employer to manage your employee based on their individual needs. When you had everyone in the office, it was a lot easier to manage because you could just generally be there and you just say, come and see me if you have a problem and so forth. But it's very different working remotely in terms of managing the individual needs of your employees because you truly have to get to know what management style works best for your employees and you need to shift for each employee what works best for them. If you have a large group of employees, you want to ask who would like to be part of a morning team, who would like to have a check-in. So the thing is to try and do it as much as possible in clusters. So those people who want to join in for the let's go, if we look back at sales companies, they did it. They had a morning, rah rah, let's go, let's get you pumped up and go. And the salespeople dispersed after that meeting and went on to do their various tasks. So we have the skills and we have the intelligence. We know what to do. We just need to pull on the various pieces that are there and say, oh, I'm going to apply that now because I need to, and it's going to be better for me to manage my employees in a more effective way and create more what we call interpersonal wellness. Because the results of not doing that is now you have reprimand and you now have to you now have to do the performance check in and people are being disciplined and all the threat starts and then we have the drama begins. You are going to have one or two employees that are going to need a little bit more from you and can test your patience, but that's how the world works. I mean, even if we have kids, there's one kid that just needs something different. So people are individuals, find out what they do, maybe actually set them up with a buddy, have someone else have a buddy in the morning. This is your morning buddy. I need you to check in with Joe from 8 a.m. Check in with him from 8 to 10. I will take over from 10 to noon. Then Sally will be your afternoon check-in person. So make the work easier for yourself. Don't kill yourself because that's one of the things we talk about with remote work. People are working too much, longer hours. So be smart about it. Cluster the employees that need that check-in. Do set up your times. Just like you would, some of my clients would say, "Oh, I have an open door policy." Well, with remote work, you can't have an open door policy because it didn't even work well when you had them in the office because they didn't get any work done because their office was just a revolving door. So they ended up taking the work home. So you want to not do that with remote work. You want to cluster where you have a morning meetings, bring your issues, any task you have for the morning that you think you need brainstorming on or you need a little bit more ideas on, bring it to that morning session. Let's do a check-in at lunch. at lunchtime. Let's see where everybody is. What problems were you facing? What do we need to address? And bring the collective, because there's so much power in the collective. You don't have to have all the answers. I always say to the leaders, check with your people. They're actually more knowledgeable most of the times and have more subject matter expertise than you as the leader. Tap into that. Bring them together. If you notice somebody who has an expertise in a particular area but is not attending the meetings, invite them. I would like you to once or twice a week be part of this meeting. I know you're independent worker and you have a lot on your plate, but could you bring your expertise to that meeting? So we have to be strategic in what we do so we can get the results that we want.
You mentioned something earlier, and I just want to address it briefly. How do you keep the outside political environment from coming into the workplace? Or should you be allowing it to come into the workplace?
Okay, well, what we do, we become what we do. So the perspectives we have at work and the skills and competencies we develop to be experts at work, we bring it into our personal lives. So we tend to have lenses with which we see the world. And we may view politics from the same lenses too. We see that from time to time. So you do have to remember that your employees all have lives and they all have issues and social issues that are very important to them. You have to give them the leverage to be able to say to you, this is very disturbing, or I need time off, or I won't be available this afternoon because I'm going to be part of a demonstration. I'm going to be out to protest, or I'm going to be, and that may be the door opening for a conversation to ask how are they doing, how are they feeling about a particular thing. And it's not because you're there to change their mind or change their ideas. It's really showing that you care. And I think many employers are struggling with the political realities and the social issues that have really come about due to COVID-19. We see the big um, actually global pull for Black Lives Matter, and after the killing of George Floyd, we see in this pandemic era that people have a lot less tolerance to some of the things that used to go on socially and politically. So when those things happen, your job is to listen, not to. It's not your job to shift people's perspective or to now tell them what to believe or what to do or what actions to take. If something is impacting your workplace, if someone is bringing politics into the workplace that's detracting from the conversation, um, causing a divisive energy at work, well, you do need to step in as the leader to say, this is not the place for that conversation and take this offline. But if they are having healthy conversations that is engaging and it's respectful and people are learning, then create an opportunity for that. I've had several employees over the last few months who've been asked by their employers to do presentations or do a teaching or share with their coworkers on their perspectives, for instance, on Black Lives Matters, on some of the other social issues that are happening in our workplace, in our community, mental health, and some of the other, because of the Black Lives Matter expansion and resurgence over the COVID-19, we're seeing a lot of the other diverse groups are also sharing their concerns. And it creates really a platform for many of those, which is quite good because there are many people who've been oppressed and have not had a platform or have not had a voice. And this has given impetus to them to say, yeah, we matter too. And I think that's a healthy thing because the world is made up of many different people. And it's good that we are all in this together and we're all sharing the spotlight and working together to enhance the well being and the acceptance of all people on our planet. We shouldn't ever be at a place again where certain groups are, you know, suffering and being oppressed or in any way being ostracized. So it's very, very important for those conversations to happen. But you have to create the right environment, and you have to ensure that it's not impacting the performance of the workplace or the work that's being done. If your employees want to use your Zoom platform for an after hours meeting to talk about that, as a leader, is it going to cost you something? Is it going to take away? If they want to do that, that's fine. If they want to use their lunch break and have a dialogue, if an employee wants to do a teaching or share a presentation at a staff meeting, can you give them 15 minutes? Think about ways to be creative and to be inclusive. One of the webinars I'm teaching this week is on inclusiveness and how important it is to be inclusive in the workplace. Because it's one thing to talk about wanting to create diversity, but what is the result? How do we see it? How do employees see themselves in the workplace? How are we treating employees when they have an issue? An issue came to my attention this weekend. There's an employee from an ethnic background working in a school, and had a split shift. So the morning the employee worked for 4 hours, then had a split shift, a 2 hour split shift break between the next shift. And the employee decided to stay at work and do some work, some reading, company reading, or educational reading that they need to do for their work, for their own certification, but through the company's well, what does the leader do in the organization? Sees the employee sitting at the desk. Instead of striking up a conversation and saying, "Oh, how are you doing? What's happening?" She goes to the department and complain that this employee is sitting around on their time. And so the employee is asking, "Well, I wonder if I was white, would she feel more comfortable to come and approach me and ask me about this? Is this happen?" It's those are the things where we need to think about inclusiveness. Is, are we treating everyone the same way when there is an issue? It's usually I have this conversation with employees who've never had difficulties at work. I was speaking at a group at a conference in August, and a few months ago during the pandemic, and an employee said to me, one of the speakers said, "Oh, I've never had any problem," but he was a high performer. He was always a high performer, and he's never had experienced difficulties or tension at work because he was always the lead producer. And the question I posed is like, I wonder what your experience would have been if you were not the high performer, if you were not leading the sales, if you were not leading in performance, the situation may have been different. So I think when we talk about inclusiveness, we have to look at the fairness in dealing with some of those issues. How do we address them? How do we deal with them? How do we respond to them? Is the response harsher for those who are not like us? Or is it the same as if you were my daughter, my child, my niece could have been? And I think that's where we lose it, where we start to see, that's where the differences are. That's where it's not equitable. And that's something that we really need to start looking at, I think, more seriously. And we need to see in inclusiveness things like in leadership, in the C-suite, what's the representation? Those are also very, very important when we talk about inclusiveness at work.
This is a personal question for you, and I've known you for a few years, Joyce. What makes you personally able to comfortably interact with C-suites? You don't seem to have any discomfort yourself, any self-doubt. You're a woman, first of all, and you deal with global organizations. You're an ethnic minority and you're dealing with global organizations. What's your secret to success?
Hmm, that's a very interesting question. I I believe that I have a voice, I have a message, I have a purpose, and I believe that I've been given a very unique perspective to look at things in a particular way. And so the solutions that I bring to the table have always been helpful. So that has encouraged me to be more confident. But um, I think I also believe that everyone should be treated equally and respectfully based on what they bring and how they show up and how they participate. And they should be judged by their actions and not by their race or gender or culture. So I have not never allowed myself to be put in a package or in a box that you're a visible minority, you're female, you're this. I've always been a learner. So I'm a continuous learner. I'm always taking courses, learning, always educating myself. So I so that has also helped me to be confident that what I share with my clients is valuable, and I've seen the results of my actions and my interventions and how it has supported them to be successful. So that continues to be to bring me joy in what I do, but also has enhanced my confidence. But I think I've always been that personality type. I remember growing up, my grandmother used to say to me, um, you're walking tall. And in my culture, I came from Eastern Caribbean island, Dominica, and in our culture, the girls were supposed to be quiet and docile and respectful, and but I've always been forthright. I've always been, I walk tall with my head up. And I remember my grandmother specifically saying, you shouldn't walk tall because, you should bend your shoulder in and you should walk with your head down and you should be more quiet. And there was a resistance in me. I, I loved my grandmother. I always tried to obey, but I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. So,
Well, I'm
I,
glad you couldn't do it. You are delightful. You are an amazing opportunity to talk to. I think we need more time with you, Joyce.